Hey all, welcome to the next version of Amnic Cast. Today we have Smita Ojha, who heads engineering at Mindtickle. She has worked at some of the largest companies in the world, and I was talking to her, and she was talking through the path of like how 20 years back we used to send CDs to now she works on the SaaS world. So let's understand our journey. Right? Smita, welcome to the Amnic Cast.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Amnic Cast, for hosting me on this podcast. I have been in the industry for 22 years and started my journey as a developer in SharePoint Search, Office 365, Microsoft. And that was the time when I worked on shipping the CDs. And post that, I went through the journey when Office product became Office 365, which was hosted on the cloud, and what it took for products from CD to be hosted in the cloud. So that was a big, massive journey and a lot of learnings by itself. After that, I moved to Facebook, and in Facebook, we had I worked on some of the large scale systems as well as hosting the world's largest social graph cache there. And after that, I moved to SaaS product again, Google Workspace, and again worked on some of the analytics platforms as well as large scale systems as well as the enterprise software. Taking the learnings from all the three companies that I worked on, I thought of applying all of that into a smaller setup in Mindtickle, which is again a SaaS software based on productivity for the seller teams and sales enablement platform as well as revenue productivity platform. So I think I got that right opportunity to apply all of my learnings to Mindtickle and then take it forward.
Awesome. So I think we'll take you through the journey of like where you started off. Like, so why don't you talk about, you worked for some of the largest companies, right? Why don't you talk about some of the things that you've built there, right? And then we'll go through the journey of what all you have built, and finally how does that come into Mindtickle, right? So why don't you take us through one of the journeys of pick any of the companies that you worked on and talk about like what you have done and what you.
I think there's a good learning from every company that I have worked in. I would say like a lot of my early developer days were in SharePoint, and at SharePoint we were shipping the CDs, which means everything had to be perfect. Once ships, you cannot take it back. So the value of doing things right, doing things thoroughly, getting the right code reviews done, right, getting the right design done, having the logging in place, everything has to be in place on the day zero the things are going out. So that level of I wouldn't say it was it was a level of perfection that is expected in the code, and that became my core of my engineering culture as well. The other part, I would say, so that taught me about being thorough, being right, being complete in a way. And so that was a good learning. The second thing which I learned is like when we were, then I saw this whole thing of cloud come up. That was again about 17-18 years back when all the enterprises started thinking about cloud. So first thing which came is like we have a CD product, and how do we host it in the cloud? What challenges are there? There is no DevOps, there are no tools at that point. So how do we manage that thousands of servers? How do we write the right level of scripts in generating that? So that whole era was like a lot of innovation happening, and me being part of that whole innovation journey, and seeing many of the tools getting developed, many of the cloud tools getting developed. A lot at that time, a lot of streaming big data also came in. Correct. Like all the event processing systems started coming in around that time. So I had a blast innovating on Office 365 with some of the newest technologies that were getting built either in Microsoft Research or in Office 365 ourselves, and taking that whole platform to the cloud. And the challenges with it, making it multi-tenant is a challenge. Hosting it is a challenge, how to collect the logs, how to look at the network router traffic, which tools to use. All of that was a big piece of learning by itself in my first decade of my engineering team.
Awesome. What was the biggest thing that you saw from the CD world where everything in the server based to moving to a cloud based stuff, right? Like setting up the servers to making it multi-tenant, right?
Yeah.
Also, can you talk about what is the DevOps innovation you saw during that time?
So the DevOps innovation, a lot of it came, I think, in the world of monitoring the systems, right? Once the systems are up, once the deployments are done, I felt like how you monitor the system. What are the monitors that you will use? How will you use a network router monitors to figure it out? I personally went and applied all of my learnings, theoretical learnings of anomaly detection, and put it into use into the router systems and learned a lot from that, right? And caught a lot of anomalies where the system is going wrong. So I felt like that the DevOps coming up and the streaming big data or the event processing system coming up together, that combination for me was a bed of innovation which happened. And after that, all this Datadog, New Relic, even Kafka, Confluent, all of these systems came up. Even Splunk was also coming up around that time. I think the whole hosting and event processing system coming together was a big bed of innovation for many companies to be successful.
I think when I used SharePoint, I think it was already in cloud because I think it was in early 2010, 12 kind of a stuff.
Yes.
Where when you click SharePoint, I'm sure every company had one version of SharePoint or the other. It was already on the cloud, and then for you, it's just like you just put your data and then access it, right? So you moved from Microsoft to Facebook, right? And what was the change and what did you learn working at Facebook on that kind of a scale, right?
Yeah. So coming out of Microsoft into Facebook system, it was like putting myself in a very uncomfortable zone with respect to tech stack, because all my life I had worked on Microsoft systems, and other than using Office 365, Facebook was not using anything else. So but there were few things that so they were running their own servers, they had their own images, they were building the social graph cache at that time. What I realized is while building the social graph cache, and that cache at that point was serving, some caches were serving 4 billion queries per second. The total of all the systems which I owned was serving 7 billion queries per second. What I realized is that importance of understanding where every microsecond is spent in that system. When to use C++, when to go to C, or when to go to assembly language, and having a full understanding of that. Whereas when you're shipping the CDs, maybe that level of performance tuning is not required at that particular time. Whereas here it was all about performance tuning and scaling, and how a very simplistic system is a kind of like a basis of building something big. There are papers around it that how Facebook built their social graph cache Tau on MySQL. A very simplistic graph. Everything was a node or an edge, and it was a beautiful system. So I learned that how a simple system can be scaled, and why that is being a simplistic system was a necessity in order for it to scale.
I think lot of complex stuff can be built on top of a simple thing, in terms of like you can build a cache, you can build everything, but MySQL could be the base for all these things, right? I've seen other companies also do it, right? So, and then from Facebook you moved on to Google, right?
Yes.
And again you built some of the systems that pretty much everybody in the world would have touched that part of it, right? So can you talk about that journey?
Yeah. So Facebook was a B2C system. After working in after working in Microsoft Office 365 for 10 years and having that itch to work on the SaaS, I decided to come out of the B2C world and back to the SaaS world in Google Workspace. And there I was part of the enterprise platform team. enterprise platform powers all the enterprise applications in Google Workspace, which is probably in 3 digits and a huge number. And I also moved to Bangalore from US around that time. And one of the project that I started in Bangalore was related to workspace login system, which required the settings of the profile. Now, this is the most critical part where when a person logs in, a certain property bag of the settings come along with them. And how do you fetch it at a scale? How do you optimize it at a scale? How do you make that service the highest available service in the world? Because Google login service, imagine, is taking a dependency on it. And there are only a handful of such services in the world where you can say that this is highest available service. So we got a opportunity, Google Bangalore, a very proud moment for Google Bangalore, to build that service from scratch, from Google Bangalore, and take it into production and show that yes, this is a highly scalable service. And I would say there were many ingredients needed to make this happen. I would say, along with an awesome architect, an awesome team, I also partnered very, very strongly with the Zurich DevOps team in Google Workspace, who also laid a very good foundation on how the service should be designed from day one in order to have that right level of availability as well as the right level of scale. So getting that in place from DevOps and SRE, I think that was a very important piece into the architecture decision to take that forward.
So one of the things of building this kind of highly critical systems, right? I have built it like before. The biggest thing is deployment, right? Especially on the SaaS world, where if you miss it, you're going to bring down the entire set of stuff, right? And back in like 8-9 years back, when A/B testing and all those things were still in infancy and all those things, you are looking at potentially, if that goes down, the whole login is gone, right? Like now, at your scale, like what are some of the things that you did, and how did you make sure that such a critical system can be like deployed and scaled at will, right? Like what went behind the scenes to get these things done?
Yeah. So keeping things simple is the biggest learning which I have. And being in a big company, Google or any other big company, they will always have a set systems to use for you to scale. You can't go and build things on your own. You can't go and build your own deployment or your own logging system, right? There are things which have worked in the past, and you take those building blocks and then put things on top of it. So for me, it was very important to stick to the building blocks which the Google team already had, and then use them, whether it was scaling, whether it was providing redundancy, or providing the how many copies do you need. There were some standard best practices across Google, not just in Google Workspace, but also on the search side as well. So there were a lot of good things in place that we picked and choose and then put it together in order to produce that service. I also feel again, both in Facebook as well as in Google Workspace, when you build things at scale, simplifying your architecture is the basic thing that I learned, that the simple it is, the easier it is to scale, the easier it is to manage. And in the beginning of the project, you might come across one or two requirements which will push you towards the complexity. And how you argue that, how do you take a decision around why do you need this complexity, what is the need of it, that healthy discussion leads to the simplicity. So I feel like that healthy discussion between me, the architect, the Google architects, as well as the DevOps SRE, a good time was spent in bringing all of this into picture, all of these discussions to happen before the service was built. And that thoroughness in the beginning led to the success of the project.
Nice. So now that we have seen all these big companies, I think they all already have the stacks to do it, right? How do you bring some of those things into what you currently work on, right?
Yeah.
And what are the best practices that you have picked? What are the things that you have seen with other startups? That what did you take through the startup journey from the world of how different was it when you moved from these companies to a startup world?
Yeah. So I always wanted to be part of startup. In fact, when I talked about my Microsoft journey and taking Office 365, I always found that small team. Also, somewhere within my team, there'll be a small team which will be doing something else, and I was very fortunate to get that sponsorship from the leaders as well to go ahead and do it. So I always had a part of my team always being that startup team. No matter in Microsoft as well as in Facebook as well as in Google, there was always a new thing that I'll be trying something, and so, I mean, once it failed, also the other time it succeeded. So there was a combination of learnings there. So I wanted to try what it would mean to apply my 20 years of learning into a setup and see if I can take that company forward, and how can I apply my learnings. I think one thing was very clear to me from day one, that I am part of a product company. We are giving a product for the productivity of sales organization, right? So the product and the customer satisfaction is the first piece that you need. Building the right architecture for that is, then it comes like the simplicity, and then how you make it like the quality first. When I joined the company was already in a very good shape. It had multi products. It had a very strong customer base there with Cisco, NetApp. We have Harley Davidson, Ford. So very big names as well as some commercial customers as well. So a lot of things were in place, and my job was to see where I can bring in the efficiency, where I can bring in more scaling of the systems, where I can bring in more innovation in the products. So that's where, of course, one of the hardest part in my first 4 months is I have so much to do, or there's so much I can change or I can bring, but what is the value of it, right? I can say today, okay, this database system is not right, let's replace it. This event processing system may not scale, let's change it. Or let's bring this data warehouse in. The logging system, we can optimize it further. Of course, there are 10 other tech debt things that you can change because this product is 10 years old. But the most important point was, that of these, which ones are the highest priority that will help the product, that will help the customers. So it's so that I think was a very a big exercise by itself, that what should be changed, what should not be changed, in which order should be changed, what should be prioritized. In some places, how the microservices are built. Why are they built in certain way? Are there more number of microservices needed? Are there monolithic services needed? If there's a monolithic, why will you break it down? If there are many, why would you bring it together? What is it costing you? So there's no right answer that, oh, you should have a monolithic service, or you should have everything should be microservice, right? It has to be balanced in the current product requirement and manageability that we want to build in. So those were a couple of things that always came to my mind, that while I want to simplify the architecture to scale, what things should I pick to simplify, and why, and what will the product benefit from it.
Got it. So one of the things working for the companies, like I was at Yahoo, right, where the choices were already platformized, right? Yes. Caching, you pick one. So a lot of these things you can pick only between these 2-3 choices, right? There is nothing that you can just go and do it. But one of the biggest thing when I came into a startup world is from an enterprise world is like you have unlimited options to pick.
Yes.
Right. So for the same thing, one service could run on this, another service could run on that. You can try and test what you want to do, right? Because there is no real structure in terms of, okay, everybody does it, right? Like, what was your transition from that part of it, right? I'm sure like all these companies like Facebook, Google will know this works, let's use it. To how do you translate that to a startup?
Yes, I think. When the startups, I've also talked to a lot of other CTOs as well as a lot of other friends who are running the startups, and I think what happens in the beginning of the startup. I was not part of the 0 to 1 journey, but I know many of my friends, and including Mindtickle, how they went from 0 to 1. The first priority is to prove themselves. The first priority is to get something out in front of the customers. At that time, simplicity of the architecture is not the first thought that comes into the picture. And I think I would advise the startup world to actually keep that as the first principle to make it easy for yourself. We do have of course, when the young crowd comes into the startup world, they want to try out new things, they want to build new things, they want to do new POCs. And when the POC is a hit, you want to take it to the product, you want to take it to the customer. Now, the more customers want it to you, so you want to productionize it even faster. And all of that is pretty good because you get a verification. But after a while, one should take a step back and see what makes sense and fix it sooner than later. So we were, for example, there's this concept which we run, which is like called the hygiene sprint, right? So at some point you will say that, hey, if we have made some mistakes, now is the time to correct it. If some things are going well, others should stick to it. So one of the system that we are fixing is the event processing and how the events come together. We are a multi-product company, so there are signals coming from all the different products, and data is the king. Getting all of them into one place, and so that we can build insights on top of all the different product lines. I think that is something which is not only simplifying our architecture, but also giving product the opportunity to combine those insights and take it to the customers. So that was one of the system which I touched and said that no, let's at least get everything together so that we are not in the separate analytics platform for different analytics platform for different products, but bring it all together, which can scale. So I think that has started paying off, and that's a very good thing to see how the customers are loving it and how the product is loving it.
Nice. What are some of the best practices that you use? You talked about this. Any other best practices that you want to share with the audience in terms of one is 0 to 1 journey, but you are into a different journey, right? Like, what are some of the best practices that you run to make sure that others can also adapt and what is working for you?
So we are an organization with about 300 engineers, and what I looked at is one of the thing is the process part as well, right? Because we want to give liberty, the freedom for every team, every pod to go at their own speed, to be independent. But at somewhere we have to prioritize across the board as well. So, like for me, one of the first things that I did when I came to Mindtickle was getting everything in a uniform state in Jira. I said whatever the product is, at least there should be one place where we can look at everything on what is happening, have the right prioritization call done, and have that so that product can also make the decisions based on that. Since that is streamlined, I think that has helped a lot. So this was around the processes. The second thing which I focused on soon after joining, and that was, I think everybody was screaming for it, they need it, is kind of like test environments of before you go to production, there should be 2 or 3 test environments of different kinds. One is for while you are developing, one is where you integrate with other services, one is where the perf test is run, and then you go into production. So all of a little bit of pre-environments and how do you sort it out. I think in Google everything was sorted out for me. I didn't have to do anything there. And here I figured that no, this is a good practice to bring in. And everybody loved it. Everybody wanted it, right? No, as a developer, you want to be productive and you want your environment to be correct in order to test it. So I think that DevOps team and how to bring that environment in, that was the second practice which I put in, which really helped the team scale.
Is that the velocity improved because of that? Like, what is the output that you measure that having these many environments helped you?
There, I think it's the stability of the production environment and ability to catch the regressions sooner before it goes to production. So we have one environment which is also dedicated, where we do all the performance regression testing before things hit the production, so that we catch the regressions beforehand, and that also helps. Before there was no such environment, and once you ship it, then you will do the performance testing. So I think having that whole level of maturity of how the systems are done.
What are the different teams that you own?
Yeah, so as head of engineering, I have, of course, the whole developers, front end, back end, as well as some of the ML developers. Then we also have a Center of Excellence machine learning team. We have DevOps, SRE, and DBRE, which takes care of our database reliability engineering. And we also have the QA, TPM, as well as the product documentation team. So that makes the entire engineering as one unit. And DevOps SRE is something special that I have always paid very, very close attention to. I call it DevOps SRE together because it's an interchangeable and as well as it's one team unit for me. Sometimes people ignore that, but it is a very, very critical part of the organization. These are the people who make decisions to introduce the right dev tools to make the developers productive. They introduce the right tools to keep your site up and running. They participate in the design decisions so that the services you build can scale. They also help you in cost optimization, which is a very big factor while hosting your services. So having an optimal design of DevOps and SRE team was to me as critical as having the right Center of Excellence machine learning team. So they always had the seat on the table for every decision or any technical decisions that gets made in the company.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming here and being part of Amnic Cast.
Yes, wish you all the best, and it was a pleasure being on the podcast.